The machine, how private equity owns your childcare. Here's the play in one clean frame. National brands, KinderCare, Partners Group, Learning Care Group, American Securities, and Bright Horizons, public institutionally owned. Roll up local centers, then flip the real estate and standardize fees to hit EBITDA. Cute names stay. The spreadsheet takes over. The lever that locks your bill, Sale-Leaseback. If a chain owns buildings, new owners sell them to a real estate trust, then lease them back with 2 to 3% annual rent escalators. Add buyout debt on top. Before a crayon gets bought, your tuition services rent increases and interest expense. That's why cost of care letters outpace inflation. Rent and debt first, classroom second. How it shows up on your invoice, one unified EBITDA play, not random add-ons. Waitlist and registration fees, front-load cash and quarterly numbers. Tech/security platform fees, $15 to $35 a month for the app and cameras, recurring margin disguised as safety. Facility maintenance or materials surcharges, steady drip to pad revenue per child without a headline tuition spike. Card convenience fees, charge you to use the portal they require until you push for ACH. Centralization makes it fast. HR, payroll, curriculum, and billing get harmonized. Policies and fee ladders go copy-paste across cities. Zip code pricing and A/B tested offers tweak revenue per slot by neighborhood, commute routes, and competitor closures. If a nearby center folds, expect a program sustainability bump within weeks. It's airline pricing for nap mats. Utilization seals the margin. Rooms run at legal ratios all day. Floaters vanish. Overtime bans appear. If someone calls out, rooms combine for staffing. Dashboards look efficient. Burnout and churn rise. Parents absorb the chaos because losing a spot is worse. That loss aversion is part of the model. Quick tells you're inside the machine. Identical handbooks and fee names across different brands. Long notice periods, auto-renew language, and mid-year hike clauses. Directors who need corporate approval for anything real. A new security/maintenance fee followed by a 4% hike, while raises freeze. Your counter moves, tight and tactical kill card fees. Move to ACH in writing. Ask for a tuition credit if they require the portal. Audit and opt out. Decline tech/enrichment/materials bundles you didn't request. Ask for itemized statements and remove optional charges next cycle. Anchor the rate. Collect quotes via web, phone, and tour. Lock the lowest and ask for a 12-month hold with fees waived. Time the ask. Negotiate at low occupancy points. End of quarter, open slots. Bring 2 real competitor quotes. Add a parity line. If this room is offered lower to new families, adjust our rate to match. Bottom line, the big 3 wrote the template. Regionals follow it. Sale-leasebacks and debt set your floor. Junk fees and ratios protect the spread. Once you see it as one machine, not random pain, you can negotiate packages that trade your predictability, renewal, ACH, school day hours, for lower all-in cost. The invisible algorithm, dynamic pricing for toddlers. Childcare pricing isn't fixed. It moves like airline seats. Same room, same teachers, 2 different quotes, because a quiet algorithm is steering the numbers for revenue per slot. Social proof twist. Parents in your own zip code are likely paying different rates today for the same room. It starts with zip code bands. Corporate sets market-adjusted tuition by neighborhood income, commute routes, and nearby employers. Fewer competitors within 10 minutes? Price nudges up. Major hospital or tech campus nearby. Expect program sustainability letters. It's not personal. It's segmentation built on census and rent data. Then you have to deal with surge logic, which kicks in if a competitor down the street suddenly shuts its doors. When waitlists jump and tours start spiking, the system sees that occupancy has crossed a certain threshold and nudges the price up by $25 or $50. They like to call this demand alignment or program sustainability, but it's really just the same classroom and the same crayons costing more because the local map changed. Even the lead funnels on their websites are being A/B tested to see how much you are willing to pay. If you fill out a web form on a Tuesday morning, you might see a lower rate with a deadline to tour by Friday to lock it in. However, if you call on the phone, the director might read from a script with a higher number and a much shorter window to decide. I've seen parents use 2 different email addresses to inquire and get 2 completely different quotes for the exact same toddler room. That discount they offered wasn't a gift. It was just a test to see if you bite. The amount of time you spend on their website actually matters because the system is tracking your behavior. If you spend a long time on the infant tuition page and then leave without signing up, the system tags you as being price sensitive. The next time they contact you, they might offer a limited time registration fee waiver to get you back in the door. This allows them to keep the higher base tuition rate while giving you a small carrot to make you feel like you're getting a deal. There is also a sneaky tactic involving birthday cliffs where the price changes as your child gets older. If your child is turning 2 next month, they might show you a preview rate that looks pretty reasonable at first glance. But if that age transition happens to line up with the end of a financial quarter, corporate might push a tiny price spike right when you get the classroom progression letter. You'll think the price jump is just because of the new age group, but it's actually a timing window they use to hit their internal revenue targets. Those annual cost of care letters are framed as keeping up with inflation, but the math often doesn't line up. If inflation is 3% and your hike is 5%, that extra spread isn't crayons. It's rent escalators, interest costs, and margin targets bundled into one line. Call it what it is, the investor spread. So, how do you actually fight back against this invisible pricing? You have to pull it into the light using 3 specific tactics. First, try rate anchoring across different channels by getting quotes through the website, over the phone, and in person. Ask for the exact same schedule and start date every time to see if the numbers stay consistent. If you find a lower number in one of those spots, forward it to the director and ask to lock that rate in for the next year with the extra fees waived. You are testing the price elasticity that they assume you aren't savvy enough to notice. Second, you need to pay attention to occupancy timing by asking the director how many spots are currently open in the toddler room. If they seem hesitant to give you a straight answer, follow up by asking if they have any special promotions for families who tour this month. The algorithm usually loosens up during months when occupancy is low, so the end of a quarter with open slots is your best window to negotiate a lower base rate. Third, you should try to get a rate parity clause added to your contract when it comes time to renew. This is just one sentence stating that if the tuition for your room decreases or is offered lower to new families, your rate will be adjusted to match. Corporate might not always sign off on it, but it shows them that you know how the game is played and that you are watching their pricing moves. I have seen parents successfully get this language into contracts at major chains that claim they never negotiate. You should also use your child's birthday to your advantage during these negotiations. If the move to a new room lands near the end of a quarter, ask to move the date by a couple of weeks in exchange for keeping the lower price band. If you frame it as being better for your child's transition and continuity, the school will often agree to it. For an infant moving up to a toddler room, that small shift can save you over $100 a month. Finally, don't be afraid to use competitor leverage without actually bluffing about leaving. Bring in 2 real quotes from other local centers and tell the director you'd prefer to stay for the sake of continuity. Tell them that if they can match the price and remove the extra tech or materials fees, you will sign on for another 12 months. This shifts their focus from trying to capture new demand to protecting the customers they already have. And that is exactly where the algorithm starts to bend in your favor. Once you name these tactics, you stop feeling like you're crazy because you realize it's just a game of price discovery. Squeezing the classroom, labor cuts, and quality risks. This is where the spreadsheet hits your kid's day. When corporate pushes revenue per child up while freezing labor per child, the classroom absorbs the blow. You'll feel it as constant low-grade chaos that never showed up on tour. Psychological hit, uncertainty fatigue. Parents tolerate more just to avoid disruption, another lever in the model. The problem starts with pay because when wages stay low, the best teachers eventually walk away. We've all seen it happen. Talented educators realize they can make more money working at Target with a predictable schedule and way fewer diaper changes. To fill those gaps, centers often hire less experienced staff or use part-timers to avoid paying out benefits. They might harmonize those benefits, which is just a fancy way of saying you have to wait longer to get health insurance and you get fewer paid days off. Morale takes a nosedive, and that's when the scheduling games really begin. You'll notice ratios creeping up toward the absolute legal limit. If the state law says 1 adult can watch 4 infants, the center will run at exactly 1:4 all day long to maximize profit. They often cut the floaters, those amazing extra helpers who jump in to fill gaps, just to keep the labor numbers looking pretty on a corporate dashboard. When a teacher calls out sick, the whole system breaks, and you'll show up to find a handwritten sign saying the penguins and turtles are hanging out together today. It sounds cute, but the reality is more kids per teacher, less individual attention, and a much faster path to accidents. Then comes the scripted curriculum, which is usually sold as a high-tech upgrade for your kids. In reality, these binders and tablets are designed so less experienced staff can just follow a script, allowing the company to hire people at much lower wages. While it standardizes the lesson plans, it also kills the soul of what skilled educators do, like reading the room or spotting a developmental delay early on. When the goal is just to cover the plan, the child has to fit the program instead of the program fitting the child. Planning time is usually the next thing to go. Teachers end up prepping for the next day during their own time or while the kids are napping because the ratio math doesn't allow for a single second of slack. Materials show up in pre-packaged kits that look efficient, but they actually lock teachers into a box. If your kid has specific sensory needs and the solution isn't in the official kit, the teacher's hands are tied. The message from the top is loud and clear. Follow the system, not your craft. To squeeze out every last cent, shifts get fractured into weird blocks. You might see split shifts or unpaid half-hour gaps where a teacher is asked to work a few hours in the morning and then come back for the afternoon rush. Commuting eats up their whole day, their take-home pay shrinks, and burnout becomes inevitable. Because turnover is so high, new hires often start with almost zero training, meaning their first month on the job is basically live practice on your toddler's time. Everything falls apart the moment staffing dips even slightly. You'll get a push alert at 3 p.m. while you're in the middle of a meeting saying the center is closing early. You end up sprinting to your car, hitting traffic, and paying a late fee anyway. It's easy to get annoyed at the teacher standing at the door, but it's not their fault. You're looking at a brittle labor model that is literally cracking under the pressure of profit margins. Safety is where this gets really scary. When you're running at maximum ratios, even a simple bathroom break becomes a total crisis. If a teacher steps out and there's no floater to step in, the room is suddenly out of legal compliance. To fix it, they might combine rooms for just 10 minutes or stretch out snack time to keep kids occupied. It might not be illegal if it's brief, but when you do that every day, it's a recipe for disaster. Less eyes on the kids means more falls, more bites, and more stress for everyone involved. Training usually gets trimmed down to the bare state minimums, and those nice-to-have professional development days are the first to go. Great teachers want to grow and learn, but instead, they get stuck clicking through online modules and checking boxes. Even the directors lose their power because they aren't allowed to offer raises to keep their best staff from leaving for the school down the street. You'll watch your favorite teacher hug the kids goodbye and say they're going back to school, but you usually know there's more to the story. Sometimes closures are hidden right inside the school calendar. You'll see curriculum days or team-building afternoons pop up suddenly, often right after a wave of staff resignations. It looks like a planned event, but it's usually just patchwork to cover the fact that they don't have enough people to keep the doors open. And the kicker? You're still paying full tuition for those days. Communication starts to feel different too. That personal text from a local owner gets replaced by a generic portal message signed by center support. If you have a concern, you're told to submit a ticket rather than having a real conversation. Everything becomes polite, distant, and corporate. Meanwhile, your child is struggling because their morning teacher changes every single week. Routines fall apart, kids start regressing, and suddenly bedtime at home becomes a total nightmare. So, what can you actually do about this? I've got 3 moves for you. First, keep your eyes on the ratios. Ask the director what their target ratio is versus their actual ratio at different times of the day. If they just repeat that they follow state law, ask them what their scheduling buffer looks like. You want to hear that they staff below the maximum and always have a floater available. If they don't have a good answer, take note of that. Second, ask about the staff. Find out how long the lead teachers have been there without making it weird. If nobody has lasted more than a year, that is a massive red flag. Ask if the director has the power to give raises on their own. If every financial decision has to go through a corporate office, you should expect constant turnover. Third, push for real planning time. Ask when the teachers actually get to prep their lessons. If the answer is during nap time, you can bet the quality is dropping. You can even ask to see a photo of the weekly lesson plan just to make sure that planning time is being protected. Finally, be an advocate for the people actually watching your kids. Bringing snacks is great, but you should also tell corporate, in writing, that you'd rather see a $1 an hour raise for the aides than a new app feature. Directors will often forward those emails up the chain of command. If enough parents make noise, things actually start to move. At the end of the day, you simply cannot get high-quality care out of low-quality jobs. If the spreadsheet is squeezing the classroom is going to squeeze your kid. And trust me, you're the one who's going to. Feel that stress when you're trying to get them to sleep at night. From community care to corporate care, a short history. Let's do a quick bit of time travel so you can see how we got here. Back in the 1970s, more moms entered the workforce and dual-income homes became the norm. The old patchwork, co-ops and grandma buckled. Churches and YMCAs filled gaps with half-days and loose rules. Messy, local, cheap. By the 1980s and 1990s, demand exploded. Employers needed reliability. Cities tightened safety codes, good for kids, expensive for operators. That's when the first big chains saw daylight. Standardize the room, the snack, the schedule, sell predictability. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the sector professionalized. National brands like KinderCare and Bright Horizons grew by acquisition. Finance spotted two businesses, classrooms and real estate. Split them. Sell the building, lease it back. Expand fast. Lock in rent escalators. That's when your tuition started paying landlords you'll never meet. Then the 2010s arrived with cheap debt and low rates. Private equity saw a fragmented market with captive demand, translation, parents must pay. Funds scooped up regionals and harmonized payroll, handbooks, and pricing. The Sunshine Grove logo stayed. The billing header did not. Then the pandemic hit in 2020 and changed everything. It forced classrooms to close and blew massive holes in the budgets of small, independent centers. While government relief helped for a while, many of those mom-and-pop shops couldn't survive once the subsidies disappeared. The big chains with deep pockets stepped in and bought those failing locations at a massive discount. Consolidation didn't just continue, it accelerated under the guise of providing stability. At the same time, massive employers started using childcare as a way to lure people back into the office. Companies like Bright Horizons signed huge contracts to run centers specifically for hospitals and tech campuses. While that's great if you work for a tech giant, it actually makes things harder for everyone else. When a hospital center sucks up all the best teachers by offering better schedules, the independent school down the street loses its staff and has to cut its hours. Now, I'm not saying there was some golden age where everything was perfect. There were plenty of unsafe centers and underpaid staff back in the day too. But the shift is important to understand. We went from a community-based patchwork to a world of leveraged portfolios where rent and interest are baked into your monthly bill. Regulations helped raise the floor for quality, but the finance side of things raised the floor for the price. The final trick is the branding. These big corporations have learned how to look local. They'll keep the colorful murals on the wall and sponsor the local fall festival, so you don't notice the spreadsheet driving the decisions from 1,000 miles away. That's why you have to check who actually owns the place. When the contracts and the fees look identical across 5 different local centers, it's not a coincidence. The incentives have changed, and once you see how the money flows, you can finally tell which levers you can pull and which ones are controlled by Wall Street. Micro-stories, the parents, the teacher, the insider. Lauren and Chris, Denver. 2 kids under 3. 2 solid paychecks. Daycare bill bigger than their mortgage. Base tuition looked painful but doable, $1 for 75 infant, $1,365 toddler, until the skim kicked in. $25 tech fee, $18 maintenance, $220 materials spread monthly, 3% portal fee because card required. Their $2,840 turned $3,018 before snack time. Lauren did the math. Her $3,400 take-home was basically daycare rent, so she could keep working. They tried to switch to an indie center, $260 cheaper. Trap, 2-month wait there, 60-day notice here. Give notice and risk no care. Don't give notice and pay 2 extra months at the high rate. Heads they win, tails you lose. Then the toddler room started closing at 4:30 for staffing. Chris ate $105 in late fees across 2 days. even after proving the early closures. That night they talked about one of them quitting for a year. Her boss called it a break. It wasn't. It was a career tax disguised as childcare. Jasmine, lead teacher. 7 years. CDA. Magic with toddlers. After the buyout, benefits were harmonized, cost up, time off down. Binders arrived. Tablets arrived. Judgment got replaced by scripts and kits. Ratios ran at the legal limit. Floaters vanished. One call out, and she was alone with 11 toddlers and a brand new helper who didn't know the routine. Bathroom breaks became logistics. Implementation fidelity meant the app, not the kids. She stayed late, unpaid, to log bites and bumps. Rent climbed. Her raise offer, 75 cents, pending regional approval. That was the line. She applied to a school with day one benefits. On her last day, she handed parents handwritten notes with each child's nap tells. She cared. The system didn't. Todd, finance. Mid-level. He joined to create value in a sector that helps families. First deck he built had a slide he can't unhear now. Toddler EBITDA. Targets, 18-month ROI, plus 5% growth per center, 30% margins. Playbook, sell the buildings, sale-leaseback. Lock in rent escalators, push revenue per child, test fees, hike wealthy zip codes, upsell security tech. When a nearby center closed, pricing bumped $40 because they knew parents had nowhere else to go. A regional called. Out of ratio 20 minutes, no floater. Todd modeled more staff. Leadership cut it. Post-subsidy, with rates rising, HQ demanded plus $14 per child per week, company-wide. He asked if any of it went to wages. Shrug. Benchmarking. He quit after seeing a baby's first steps watermarked by a security upsell. He kept the toddler EBITDA slide as a reminder. Childhood turned into a line item. 3 snapshots, same machine. Mortgage-level bills for parents. Scripted burnout for teachers. Dashboards that price your kid's spot like an airline seat. Once you see it, you stop blaming yourself and start playing to win. Contract traps. Fine print that pins you down. This is the part where those little paper cuts turn into actual handcuffs. You have to realize that your contract isn't just a list of rules. It's a suit of armor designed to protect the company's revenue. If you read it once, read it again with a highlighter in your hand. You're looking for 4 specific traps that keep your money flowing to them even when the service starts to slip. The first trap is the auto-renew clause that they usually hide under a friendly annual enrollment heading. It sounds like a routine update for the new school year, but if you look at the fine print 2 pages down, you'll find a 30 to 60 day notice window. If you miss that window by even a single day, you're locked in for another full year at whatever new price they decide to charge. To fix this, you should add a sentence when you sign that says no auto-renew. Renewal requires mutual written agreement. If the center won't let you change the text, just set a calendar alert for 90 days before the term ends and send a notice anyway, since you can always take it back if you decide to stay. The second trap is a withdrawal notice period that is longer than the time it takes to start at a new school. A 60-day notice is pretty standard, but since daycare spots are so rare, it basically blocks you from leaving for a better option. The center knows that you can't afford to pay for 2 places at once while you wait for your notice to run out. Your best move here is to ask for conditional notice, which means you give notice now, but it only counts if your new center confirms your spot in writing. If they won't go for that, try to negotiate a buy down, where you pay for 30 days instead of 60 because you're bringing them a new family to fill the spot. The third trap involves those non-refundable deposits and slot fees that centers love to collect. These deposits are supposed to hold your seat, but in reality, they often just act as extra cash for the corporation. If you have to leave for any reason, you lose that money, and if you go on vacation, you still have to pay a hold fee just to keep your spot. When you're signing the contract, ask for 2 things. Make sure the deposit automatically counts toward your final month of tuition, and ask for 1 free week per year where you don't have to pay while you're away. If they hesitate, tell them you want it for major life events like a new baby or a job move, because centers almost always approve these things if you ask before there's a problem. The fourth trap is the clause that allows mid-year tuition increases at any time with notice. This one can absolutely wreck your monthly budget because the $1,450 you agreed to can turn into $1,550 next month due to market adjustments. You should try to counter this with a cap that says annual increases won't go over 5% during your term. Even if they won't sign a cap, many centers will agree to a grace exit window that lets you leave without a penalty within 10 days of a price hike. That's your emergency exit if the cost gets out of control. You also need to watch out for the payment processor maze. Many contracts force you to use a third-party app that adds convenience fees while banning other ways to pay. This is a total double dip on their part. Ask them to add a line saying that ACH transfers are available at no extra cost and that credit card fees are waived if they require autopay. If they won't change the contract, send an email to the director confirming that you'll be using ACH without fees and save their response. Those emails are your best evidence if they try to sneak extra charges onto your bill later. The language they use for disputes really matters too. A lot of contracts claim that all payments are final, but that isn't true if the service they're providing actually changes. You should add a short note saying that if the classroom closes for a certain number of days, or if the ratios break state laws, you get a refund or the right to leave immediately. Even a watered-down version of this gives you a lot more power if things go sideways. Don't ignore the arbitration and venue clauses hidden in the back of the pack. Some of these companies try to force you into private legal battles in a different state, which makes it almost impossible for a normal parent to complain. Ask to cross out any out-of-state requirements, and make sure you can use small claims court in your own county for smaller disputes. Just keep the conversation boring and professional by telling them you just want a simple path for both sides if there's ever a misunderstanding. They also love to use force majeure clauses to protect themselves from everything from snowstorms to power outages. That's fair enough, but sometimes they try to sneak staffing shortages into that list. If a pipe bursts, that's one thing, but if they can't keep teachers because the pay is too low, that shouldn't be your financial burden. Make sure to clarify that staffing issues don't count as an excuse to keep your money while they're closed. If you've already signed a bad contract, don't panic because you still have some cards to play. You can use renewal time to add new rules, or you can send a policy acknowledgement letter that clarifies your notice dates and fee waivers. When a price increase hits, send your grace exit email within 48 hours and tell them you're leaving without a penalty because the terms changed. If they try to fight you, just attach their previous emails and mention that you'll be talking to state licensing about any safety issues you've seen. Finally, remember that there is power in numbers. If you can get 3 or 4 other families to ask for the same things, like free ACH payments or a grace exit window, the center is much more likely to listen. Corporate offices might say no to one person, but they usually cave when 10 families start asking the same questions. A calm and organized paper trail is always going to be more effective than 100 angry messages in a portal, and it's the best way to turn a trap into a fair deal.